Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a really critical international debate right now. It's all about NATO defense spending. This is making headlines, yeah, but it's really shaking things up. So, this deep dive, it's your shortcut to understanding these like intense financial demands on member countries and what it actually means on the ground.
Right. And what's fascinating here, our sources show there's a pretty significant dispute already brewing ahead of this big summit in The Hague. We're not just looking at what's being asked, but digging into why. Why is it causing so much friction?
Yeah.
That balance between security stuff and what's happening at home.
Domestic priorities, exactly. It's not just about the money, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's about, well, fundamentally different ideas about what an alliance is.
Okay, so given all this talk about defense spending, what's really kicking this off right now? Who's leading the charge? What exactly are they asking for?
Well, the core of it is a pretty stark demand from U.S. President Donald Trump. He's really pushing for NATO countries to up their defense spending to 5% of GDP, which is,
Wow. 5%. That sounds enormous.
it is. I mean, put it in context, even during the Cold War, very few countries spent that much consistently. It's usually linked to, countries in major wars. And he's been very direct, saying he won't protect countries that don't hit that number. It's a very transactional way of looking at alliances.
Right, transactional. So 5%. That's extraordinary. How are the other NATO members reacting, especially when, like you said, some struggle even with the old 2% target?
Yeah, that 5%, it's a huge sticking point. Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, he's called it unreasonable. He's probably the most prominent left-wing leader really pushing back openly.
Yeah, unreasonable. Okay.
Yeah, he argues that for Spain, and probably lots of others, hitting 5% is basically impossible unless it comes at the cost of increasing taxes on the middle class, cutting public services, and social benefits. Real impacts on ordinary people.
And you mentioned Spain hasn't even hit the 2%.
Exactly. They haven't met the previous goal. So that just highlights the scale of this new demand. And while, some reports say certain right-wing governments are starting to cut social spending to boost defense funds, Sanchez is really focusing on that direct hit to citizens.
That's a really powerful point from Sanchez, isn't it? Highlighting those trade-offs. Which kind of brings us to a more fundamental question about NATO itself. Is its value just about dollars and cents, or is it about that core promise, the collective defense thing in its Constitution, Article 5?
Oh, indeed, Article 5. That's the cornerstone, isn't it? The security guarantee. But it's interesting. Our sources point out it's only ever been invoked once.
Just once?
Yeah, after the September 11th attacks. So you have this foundational promise of collective security now bumping up against these really high financial demands. It forces everyone to rethink what membership actually means.
Exactly. So with this tension and how hard it is for many countries to meet these demands, there's an alternative proposal floating around, right? NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has suggested something different. What's his idea?
That's right. Rutte's put forward maybe a more achievable path. He's calling for an increase to 3.5% defense spending by 2030. But what's really interesting, and maybe why it's getting more traction, is that 1.5% of that can go to what they're calling adjacent areas.
Adjacent areas? What does that cover?
It's not just tanks and planes. It broadens things out. Think cybersecurity, which is huge now, improving roads so military vehicles can actually move quickly, reinforcing bridges for heavy equipment.
Ah, okay. So like national resilience stuff too.
Exactly. It acknowledges that modern security isn't just military hardware. It's also about a nation's ability to withstand shocks and, support logistics in a crisis.
That's a key difference then, redefining defense spending a bit. And sources say this idea has pretty broad support within the alliance.
That's what we're seeing, yeah. Broad support. Which creates this really clear contrast with President Trump's much higher, much more narrowly defined demand.
So it really sets the stage for some crucial talks at that upcoming NATO meeting in The Hague.
Definitely. The divide is pretty clear. On one side, you've got this push for a massive kind of traditional military spending increase with threats attached. And on the other, you have this focus on the really severe domestic pain that could cause, alongside a proposal for a broader, more integrated security approach that seems, well, more popular among the allies.
So what does this all mean for the alliance, and maybe more importantly for you, the listener? It feels like a really high-stakes balancing act. The very idea of security is being debated, caught between, military strength and keeping things stable at home.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really raises that important question, doesn't it? How do nations genuinely balance these big geopolitical security needs with the direct impact on their own citizens? on their well-being, their social fabric.
It's a really complex puzzle, and it directly affects things like your taxes, public services, ultimately what your country prioritizes. This isn't just some abstract debate about military budgets. It's about what security even means today, and the tough trade-offs leaders are constantly making. Definitely something to keep a close eye on.